We are live.
All right. Well, that's me then. Welcome, everybody, to the April meeting of the Urban Forestry Commission, City of Asheville. My name is Amy Smith. I'm the chair. We will start out just by introductions and then get into our business. So again, Amy Smith, and I'll just start with Urban Forestry Commission members, starting with Dawn.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dawn Chavez. I'm the Executive Director of Asheville Greenworks and the Vice Chair of the Urban Forestry Commission.
Thank you. Karen?
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen McNeil and on the Urban Forestry Commission.
And Zoe?
Hi, everyone. Zoe Hoyle, Urban Forestry Commission.
And Cecil?
Cecil Bothwell, two-term council member, and sticking with my favorite group from the whole time I was on city council, I'm on the Urban Forestry Commission.
Thank you so much. Looks like Shardon just joined in. When you're ready, Shardon, if you want to unmute and introduce yourself, we're just doing introductions. You're very perfectly on time.
I am Shardon, member of Urban Forestry Commission.
Thank you. And so for membership today, Patrick Gilbert is absent and Sharon Summerall is having an emergency car issue. She was trying to wrap it up. If she can, she'll make it, but it's not looking like it. So we're also missing Councilwoman Kim Roney said she had a previous commitment, but she promised, as always, to review and send our recommendations and concerns up to City Council in her report. And so today we also have some city staff with us today. So just make it easy. I'll call on you going around the room. So starting with Haley.
Haley Mahoney, Development Review Specialist with Development Services. And today I'm just helping out as my last day as the assistant to the Urban Forestry Commission.
Thank you. And with that, since we're live streaming, we all want to say thank you so much to Haley for being our helper and liaison and walking us through this so much. And we really appreciate your hard work. And of course, we are looking forward to working with Hunter as well. But thank you so much, Haley. And then, welcome. Thank you. Then Keith. Sorry, Keith, if you can introduce yourself, you're on mute. There you go.
Urban Forester Development Services.
Thank you. And Nancy?
Nancy Watford, Stormwater Supervisor, Development Services.
Thank you. And Claire, who are you with? Sorry, before I get too far. Oh, can't hear you.
Is that better? Sorry, I'm on my Mac today. It's very sensitive.
That's fine.
I am with Kevin Kerr. He is out of town today, so I am setting in his place for him.
All right, thank you. And so that'll be for alternative compliance. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Hunter.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hunter. I'm the new planning tech with the Department of Development Services, and I'm the new assistant to the Urban Forestry Commission.
Thank you so much. Chris Collins, are you back there?
I am here. Good afternoon. Chris Collins with Development Services.
Thank you. And I think I'm going to say this right. Grania?
Yes, well done. Thank you, Amy. I'm Grania Miser. I am with Urban Planner with Development Services, and I'm going to present the alternative compliance applications today. Hi, everybody.
Thank you. Mark Foster.
Hey there, Mark Foster, the City Arborist of the Public Works Department.
Thank you. And I think that just leaves us with Suzanne, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Godsey with Siteworks Studios. I am the applicant for the alternative compliance request.
Okay, thank you. I don't think I missed anyone. Let me know. Speak up if I didn't see you. Okay, so we are calling the meeting to order, followed by approval of the minutes from last month. That was linked action minutes in the agenda. We just need a motion to approve in a second.
I move to approve the minutes as submitted.
Thank you. Second.
I'll second.
I think I heard Zoe. I'll take Zoe got in there on that one. So we'll do a roll call vote. I'll start with Dawn.
Aye.
Zoe?
Aye.
Cecil?
Aye.
Shardon?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
I vote aye. So the minutes are approved. And that brings us to our alternative compliance for 234 Broadway. And just
Thank
give a
you.
sec.
Good afternoon again, Madam Chair and Commission members. Again, my name is Grania. I am with Development Services Department, and I'm going to present the staff report to you today for the alternative compliance application for Broadway. With driveway, parking area, and streetscape improvements. The application for the alternative compliance zones in on the landscape standard for the property line buffer and also the planting strip. The requested alternative involves reducing the buffer but maintaining the full complement of plantings, and also adding a 4-foot black metal or aluminum picket fence on top of a retaining wall along the rear of the property line. The information I have about the wall is that the maximum height of that is 7 feet. The second request is for the street trees. Again, not reducing the number of trees that are required or will be planted, but simply using silver-cell system as an alternative due to the narrowness of the planting strip along that northern property, along Monroe Place, essentially. So the existing conditions, you can see this is taken from Broadway Street. Monroe Place is to your left. There is where you can see that white van on the right-hand side of the photograph. That is an encroachment into the existing property, a driveway encroachment, and beyond that, towards the rear of the property, there is also an MSD sewer easement. The property does slope towards the street, and so that's the existing condition. It's currently being used as a parking lot. Again, this is just a different angle. This picture has been taken from Monroe Place, looking back across the property, and again across the front of the property, looking along Broadway towards town. And again, you can see on the far side of the property is where that driveway is that is encroaching on the subject property. So we have a site plan that shows the landscape plan shows the proposed buffer along the rear of the property. As I say, the buffer width is being requested to be reduced, but the actual plantings are going a little beyond what's required, and they're putting 7 additional shrubs in there. So the overall number of plants that are being included as part of this site development are not being reduced in any way. And then you can see the street trees are down on the left-hand side along Monroe Place. Again, the no reduction in the actual requirement of street trees, just the actual silver cell being used because of the site constraints and the narrowness of the sidewalk along that portion of the property. So as far as our findings, the staff finds that both the requests appear to meet the alternative compliance standards that are set out in 713, in that they're not attributable to the proposed site or the building design, that the physical conditions and constraints are not a result of the applicant's own actions, that they don't present a safety hazard, and upon maturity, they will provide landscaping that is equal or better than the proposed standard requirements. They address plant vigor and health and is reasonably compatible with the natural topography of the actual site. The project in itself also ties in with the neighborhood corridor district, which the subject site is located in. It is a residential development and fits in with the general purposes of that actual zoning district. So I don't have any more than that. Again, I felt in the review that it did meet those condition or those requirements of the alternative compliance. But I think I'm happy to open this up to any public discussion, and hopefully Suzanne can jump in with any questions too.
Thank you so much.
Thank
before
you.
we get into commission discussion, was there any public comment on this alternative compliance request?
There is one caller on the public conference line. I believe the caller can raise their hand to be entering into the queue, and then can be admitted to speak by pressing *6.
*3.
*3, excuse me. And they have exited. They're no longer in the queue. Oh, what is happening?
It looks like somebody might be trying to enter the queue. Let me refresh the page. Sometimes that helps.
Cecil and Chardon have their hand raised. One more moment.
Somebody just entered the queue.
Yes, and they have their hand raised, and so
you'll press tap to speak, and then we'll time for 3 minutes.
All right. It is starting now.
Caller, you should be live. Hunter, you did everything right. I'm not sure why we can't hear the caller. Caller ending in 7020, are you speaking? Let's see. Caller ending in 7020, we're going to end the speaking session, and then will you try pressing *3 again? Okay. Speaker on the line, please press *3 now. We're going to try to get you into the queue again.
All right.
We'll try this again. All right, 7020, please try speaking now. It's weird because I can see public input trying to transcribe what they're saying. So some portion of this is hearing them, but it's not coming through. Let me go check public input and make sure, well, no, because if they're connected through here, let me check our public input settings and see if anything got weird underneath providing public comment. Meeting is set up correctly. Let's see. I wonder. I'm going to end your speaking session again to see if maybe your transcription will load and I could read your comment out loud.
Oh, it's not concerning the alternative compliance. It's just a general comment.
Oh.
Okay. Well, general public comment will be a different session later on in the meeting.
And we can try this again then to keep the meeting going since there are no comments on this alternative compliance case.
Yep.
Okay.
And
we'll come back to
possibly their transcript will load by then as well, because I do see where it's trying to transcribe what they've said.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so back to alternative compliance. We'll come back to the caller. So let's see, I think Cecil was first with the hand up.
Yeah, what I'm a little confused about is I thought the idea of a buffer between properties included visual and to some degree sound buffer. And I'm not quite clear how an iron railing fills that.
All right, good question. I don't know if Suzanne or Claire, the applicants, would like to address that.
Hi, again, I'm Suzanne Godsey with Sightworks Studios. We have done this before on several other projects. Essentially, when we have a retaining wall, having that opaque screen on top of it just lends a giant, makes the wall even larger. And in NCD, you're supposed to have an 8-foot opaque fence. That was the agreement when they were writing the code to address concerns by the Montford neighborhood with having the greenway being on the rear of their property, if memory serves me correct. So our first request is for it to not be 8 feet because that's excessive. Our second request is that it maintain and be open so that we're not providing such a gigantic tall wall on our side. The existing house immediately adjacent to us that we're buffering from is really, really close to the property line. And by the time we plant the plant material and we put in that wood screen, if that's required, I'm a little bit concerned that we were building 2 walls to create a house, if you will. There'll be no eyes on that. And then that property owner is going to be, I'm a little concerned they'll be a little bit responsible for, what's happening back behind there, because on our side of the property, we would not have any idea unless they let us know. So again, I think it's just the screen is there and being suggested because there's a wall that is required to have a safety railing.
Thank you. That makes sense.
All right, thank you. Shardon.
Hi, Suzanne. I'm curious about the 2 existing trees that are on the property right now. It looks like a 16-inch American sycamore and another 15 or 16-inch oak. What thought was put towards designing the building and site around retaining those 2 trees?
Well, that's a good question. We are extremely limited in where we can put our driveway. So geometrically speaking, once we put in the buffer, once we put in the parking, and once we put in the required sidewalk on Broadway, we only have so much room. And then the city has requirements for how far or how close you can be to an intersection. So their preference is for you to be further back. So the driveway got sited where it is, and it's taking out one of those trees. The second one, we're having to rebuild the sidewalks. They're all not to code. So Broadway is being widened to 10 feet and then some. We have to set our street trees back as far as their setback. That's NCDOT requirement. So that sort of, again, these are more limiting factors. So I believe rebuilding that sidewalk is going to impair and destroy the roots of that other existing tree. So we've got our proposed trees coming back online, recognizing that they're new trees, but it wasn't without some thought.
Would it be possible to make the entrance of the driveway even further away from Broadway? If you look at the site map, pushing it back to where that vegetation strip is.
If we get rid of the buffer.
But it would be taking up just the parking space there. Like you'd be entering into that first parking space. You wouldn't be impeding on the buffer, it looks like.
So driveways have to be 10 feet from the property line. So we'd be coming in right there. You have to hit at a perpendicular to the Monroe place. And then we'd be diving into the site and therefore probably eliminating 3 spaces. So I don't think that's feasible. And again, I think it's the same situation with that other tree in that we're having to widen the sidewalk. So I just think that it would be tricky to see if those trees would even survive.
Well, if the city is to be believed on their Vermont Avenue project, they are replacing sidewalk and retaining mature trees with that. So I don't think it's out of the question to do that.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think that doing all of that and then completely surrounding those trees with impervious surface might be asking a little bit too much for the trees.
So, and then you're going to plant new trees and surround it with impervious surface. Is that?
And silva cells.
Yeah. I appreciate the silva cells. I love those being used. I guess my point here is that I wonder if the site design has created this issue of needing to replace existing trees and then having to go through an alternative compliance to plant those street trees. Whereas if the design was reconsidered a little bit more, retaining these 2 mature trees, then this wouldn't be an issue.
So this is more of a broader comment really than just the street trees, but I went to the State of Downtown luncheon a couple weeks ago, and the mayor said that the city is looking at a study on how to address the missing middle, and that is multifamily housing, 2 to 4 units on infill lots, and what are the impediments to those to getting more infill housing at a higher density. And I would say that sometimes it's a landscape code that is an issue, and it's a balancing act as land planners on what to keep and what to eliminate and replant. And this was a decision that we made to get 4 infill housing units on this piece of property.
Was it considered to just have 3 infill units instead of 4 and giving those trees space?
The applicant has applied for 4 townhomes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Karen.
Hi, Suzanne. I want to just start by saying that I appreciate that this is maybe the 2nd or 3rd time that I've seen you at a UFC meeting. So, and it seems like each time you are, your plantings are plentiful and you prioritize that. And I want to just start by saying that I appreciate that. What I would also like to see though is for just full transparency, I feel like it would be really helpful to have a tree inventory included in the application. And would you be willing to include them in future applications?
Yeah, if the city will add that to their checklist, we always have an existing conditions and demolition plan that someone, whether it's us or the civil engineer, generates at some time through the process. So that is definitely something that we don't have on hand, we can get it. I just need to someone needs to direct me that that's a requirement, and I'm happy to do that. I can't swear that I'll remember next time, but to my knowledge, those 2 existing trees are the significant vegetation on the site. A lot of the plant material that you see between us and that existing house is on the adjacent property side.
I'm just going to jump in real quick. Karen, your point has been brought up previously. It's just not currently written that way for all the variables. Now, SiteWorks probably does it, but not everyone does. So if as a group we want to see that, then it's a different question. It's bigger, right? It's behind the scenes changing the requirements for alternative compliance, which we have been talking about actually adding that. So just wanted to let you know that that's, again, more than just this applicant, but it has been something that's been brought up for this process. So we will revisit that as, a potential rehash of alternative compliance altogether. Do you have any other questions? Was that it? Karen, she's good. Okay. And you still have the floor. Then I think Keith was next.
Yeah, I had a question about the buffer strip in the back. I think you already answered it. Was the existing chain link fence going to come out? And was I believe there's an existing multi-stemmed red maple back there as well. Was that planned to be removed?
I think the multi-stemmed maple is on the adjacent property. It didn't show up on our survey. So the expectation is that that will remain. And I can't remember where we landed with that chain link fence.
It seemed like, looking at your property corners and your stakes, that the chain link fence was on your property, or at least like right on it, or maybe like a few inches.
That's a good question. If it's on it, we're going to be removing it. I don't think that there's any reason for it to be there. It doesn't look like it's part of securing a dog or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, and I guess to add on to that, if the multi-stem maple is going to remain, it's going to create quite a bit of shade along that buffer strip. And so I'm kind of wondering about your selection of plants for that area, whether or not they'll be able to get enough sunlight in that area.
I can certainly take that into consideration. For some reason, my PDF viewer is not wanting to work right now. So I'm trying to pull up the plan, but I can't remember if I took into too terrible consideration on shade or not. But I can take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Suzanne, I think I looked at that earlier, and that they are, at least most of the shrubs are shade tolerant species.
Okay. Oh, good. I've got my AutoCAD open. Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate that. Oh yeah, we've got rhododendrons and we've got Fothergilla. They'll tolerate shade. So will the rhododendrons, and then we've got some winter jasmine to hang over the wall. And I think that will be okay because it's going to have that heat of the wall that is going to give it some energy.
All right, thank you. So Cecil.
Yeah, looking at the plan, the idea is for 4 housing units, and 8 parking spaces. And yet, looking at the municipal climate plan we're going to consider later in the meeting, we're trying to reduce the carbon emissions from the city. Is there any reason to have to provide 2 parking spaces for every unit when this is a place that's quite convenient to downtown? It's walking distance for a lot of employees. Would it be possible to save those trees if fewer parking places were provided?
No, I don't think the number of parking spaces is going to affect those trees. And I will say we are doing a permeable paving system for the parking lot.
Good, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
All right. Looks like we might have all our questions. And I guess my only comment is I also appreciate the use of silvicels for those street trees. That part is very good. So if there's no other questions or comments, we can have a motion and a second if anyone has a motion for this project.
Well, I'll move to accept, and I really appreciate the use of the pervious materials in the parking. I just want to
thank you. Is there a second? I think I can. I'll go ahead and second. So, motion to approve the alternative compliance request. We'll do a roll call vote, starting with Dawn.
Aye.
And Zoe.
Aye.
Cecil.
Aye.
Chardon.
Nay.
And Karen.
Can I make a comment? Is it past that time?
Yeah, sadly.
Um,
So I would just recommend, if you don't mind, if you would vote, and then I'll loop you back in.
I feel like I need to abstain from this vote because without tree inventories, how can we really vote reliably on whether or not we're encouraging the preservation and health of existing trees? So I'm trying to figure out how to move that forward.
The only two things. So the only reason to abstain is if you have a financial interest in the project and it's been pre-approved before the meeting for refraining from the vote. And then for the existing site plan and all of that stuff, the thing we have to remember is a private party is able to develop their site within the current language of the ordinance. And so currently, they do not have to preserve every tree if they are meeting the rest of the tree canopy protection ordinance through planting or fee in lieu. So I totally agree. Yes, we want to save the existing mature trees, but we are deciding in this case whether the specific alternative of silvicels is adequate and the specific alternative of a smaller buffer in the back, but with the same amount of planting. So those are the two considerations.
I understand that, but I think I have to vote nay on the basis of not having all the information to really vote on whether or not we're preserving the health of existing trees. So, nay.
Okay. Thank you. So, and I vote aye. So that's 4-2. So it passes. Thank you very much to the applicants. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So next is public comment again, regular, open public comment. So if we want to try if there was still a caller.
Callers on the line, if you are there, please tap *3 now. Hunter, I'll have you try to press the buttons and time it, and hopefully it'll behave this time.
There are 2 callers, and it looks like one person might be attempting to call and make the comment. All right. Caller, I've clicked tap to speak.
Okay, can everyone hear me? I'm so sorry for the technical errors.
Yes.
Okay.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Gloria Shen here. First of all, I'd like to praise each member of the UFC for the valiant work and significant time that's been invested to advocate for these trees. With that said, I have some more thoughts concerning the golf course project. What I personally observed of the landscaping company repeatedly parking trucks and heavy equipment on the roots of trees not to be removed was appalling. Even more grievous were these 3 areas. 1, the number of mature, healthy trees ultimately removed for golf purposes alone. 2, trees removed without the indicator ribbons. And 3, the manner in which the trees were pruned without leaving any sort of collar so that these live tissue wounds would have no way to heal, ensuring the loss of even more trees. All over the golf course, one will find flush cuts on the pruned trees, showing how there was no regard for the health of the trees or their survival. I'm just very perplexed as to how any ISA certified arborist would authorize the types of cuts seen on so many of the trees around the golf course that will result in infections and the decline of these trees. I would like to see the dates when the arborist was on site. There's a great deal at stake here. If the city's not willing to learn from what went awry with this project and make changes, I have no words for that. This is how I see the situation. If I had hired a contractor to work around my home and it caused permanent damage to irreplaceable property, that contractor would have been fired on the spot and held accountable for damages. What I observed with a contractor continuing to work on this project was akin to saying, okay, so you irreparably damage several pieces of property and also consistently fail to follow directions, causing even more damage elsewhere. But let's have you come back tomorrow and over the next few weeks and put you on the calendar to come back in the fall. And how is that a good idea? What kind of precedent is being set for those hired by the city? A contractor should not fail to follow instructions repeatedly, cause irreversible damage to property that cannot be replaced, and still keep a job. I also want to point out that there was a line item in the December report indicating that only 6 trees need to be removed for strictly golf purposes. With the revised January report, that line item went missing. It would have been 66 trees, not 6. To be clear, these were not already dead, not dying, not diseased, non-invasive, non-hazardous trees. So 65% of the total trees removed for this project were for golf purposes alone. I really think these trees deserve far better than what they got. It's my opinion that accountability needs to be on the menu, not just today, but every day moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. There is one other caller in public input. Would you like to press *3 now to make a public comment? It would appear that they have not raised their hand and are not going to comment. So, Amy, that is all the callers we had on the line.
Okay. Well, thank you. And thank you to Gloria for that call. All right. So staff reports. I don't think Chris Coral is here. So we did invite Chris Coral to talk to us and give us an update on the golf course. I'm going to wait a moment in case he's able to hop in. Yeah, Haley?
Chris did message me. Sorry. Double click the hand. Chris did message to say he's running a little bit behind in his other meeting. I told him just to join us when he can, and we'll get to his item basically as soon as we can when he joins us.
I appreciate that. Okay, thank you. So we'll hold on that for just a moment. Mark Foster, do you have a report from the arborist office?
Yes, it's been a busy time for us since our last meeting. The wind storms that we keep having have kept us running all over town, picking up trees that have decided to fall into the road or other places, houses, cars, whatever. 12 of my 40 trees are planted for this year's spring planting contract. And otherwise, it's pretty much normal business. We've started roadside mowing to keep the vegetation out of the road so you all aren't driving at each other down the middle of the road. If you have any questions, I'm all ears.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mark? All right. Keith, Urban Forester, you just started, but if you have a report or anything to let us know about.
I don't necessarily have anything to report, but all I can say is things are moving along smoothly, and I'm learning a lot, and I'm getting a lot of stuff dumped on me, but trying to make heads or tails, and just having a lot of fun at it at the same time. It feels good to actually get back into a more rigorous schedule rather than the one I left in Parks and Rec, which was kind of all fun and games. But yeah, I like the challenge.
All right, thank you. Well, we're glad you're here. Okay, so DSD, the tree protection ordinance report, you can see here how much has been planted, preserved, and collected in fee and lieu. And is this total or year to date? Now I can't remember. Nancy, sorry if you can fill me in for the total number of projects and total dollars.
So canopy and planted and preserved is year to date. And that's the number of projects this year. Some are in both. So we have 2 projects that did a portion of planting and a portion of preserving. The fee and lieu is total there's 2. There's both the year to date, which is 0 for all of them, and then the total, which is the bottom line, is the total overall.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Any questions on that report? Dawn?
Is that year-to-date fiscal year or calendar year?
Calendar year.
Thank you.
Good question. All right. Any other questions? And just real quick, I want to say, so Keith, this particular piece with trying to collect data from the tree canopy report so that we understand where we're at, kind of like what Karen was getting at for the alternative compliance, but on a whole with development projects for, how much is being planted, preserved, fee in lieu, so the more data we have with that to make goal setting and decisions going forward. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention that I know it's not always easy to get this information from the report, and it has to be generated, ahead of time. It has to be required for the developer to provide the data so that it can be reported on. So I just wanted to put that on your radar that there might be some manipulation of this report to get different kinds of data going forward. So that was it. All right. Anything else? Takes us to old business. So the budget request working group, we are getting up to close to city council vote time on the next fiscal year budget. Do we have any updates on how our request is going? Nothing right now. So I propose, I was kind of personally waiting for the baseball stadium, thoughts to have their moment. But I think personally, this might be the time where we put in the big push now for the inventory and the urban forest master plan. I know that Kim was signaling that it's, positive for that to be approved, but, we can't let down because now's the time when things get shifted around. And if we're not top of mind, then that's what could get shifted out. So I would like to suggest that now's the time we make a push. So Cecil?
Yeah, I think we really should make a push. My experience on council over the 8 years I was there is that magically there's money for things that people want to do. And I mean, there's always, every time we go into the budget cycle, we hear, oh, there's not enough, and there's not enough. And yet we're being coerced by the national baseball people to stick a bunch of money into a second ring team that frankly, if they leave, we'll get an A3 or whatever, AAA, whatever. I mean, that money should be spent on forests, not on a game, in my view. But we should push, was the main point.
Perfect. So do we want to discuss, what our strategy would be? I don't know if the budget working group has, developed anything, or if we want to talk as an entire group, what shall we do? What would our push be? I know I personally will be sending emails, and I'll encourage everyone to do that as well and make it personal. We could always send out a template, but it's much better if you put it in your own words. And then directly to each council member. But are there other strategies?
Letters to the editor of the Citizen Times and the Mountain Express is another way to apply pressure to the politicians. That there's people out here who want to see forests, not bags or beans or whatever the baseball people. And it doesn't have to be that contrast, but still emphasizing that we need to do this urban forestry plan.
Right. Yeah. I would suggest in your messages, highlighting the benefits of urban forests is always the key, right? How does it meet the goals that City Council has already set forth for community resilience and climate action? So I would stress those as the key points, not make it an either or, because then they'll just highlight the or, so make it just this is why and why it's so urgent and important. So also, if anyone has time, I know I rarely have the particular time when city council meetings are going on to go to the meeting, but that's obviously a good step as well. Zoe?
You can't make bats without trees.
Yeah, you can make them out of aluminum. Anyway, Zoe, go ahead.
Well, I noticed that the last copy of our our draft for the recommendation to city council was February the 3rd, and I only see one edit in there about the having actually hired the urban forester. We could rework that paragraph a bit, but I was wondering if we could set a time to go ahead and finish that up with our group and send it forward to city council.
Of course, yeah. If we have a recommendation, I don't. You're right. I don't remember when the last one went through either. If it was this budget cycle or last, so yeah, that's a good idea as well. Dawn?
I guess a couple things. One is, well, I appreciate the contrast between the money being spent on the stadium and the money that could be spent on urban forestry. I don't think it serves us well to make that case. So just sticking to the why we need the urban forestry program and the master plan and the tree inventory. Two other things. One is that there's money coming through the state Forest Service specifically for carrying out tree inventories and other projects. They have sample tree inventories, which are smaller ones that get extrapolated, and then other projects coming down the pike. And so I think we could leverage those resources for the city to put in some funds for a tree inventory and urban forest master plan, and then we can get private funding, or actually public funding, through partnerships with Greenworks or other nonprofits. And then on April 25th, which is the city council meeting, at city council, they'll be proclaiming April 29th as Arbor Day for Asheville and presenting that proclamation. So that might be a good time for folks to show up and celebrate trees and make the request for these things. So April 25th, 5 o'clock.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Any other thoughts on that? So what is this? April. We would have time. My thought is we would have time to create a recommendation for May that would be like sort of the last, start now with the talking to people and getting involved. But if we wanted to put together a, draft something for a recommendation, we could vote on it in May. Otherwise, we'd have to kind of wing it right now. But unless we have something pulled up that I'm not seeing. So otherwise, Dawn, go ahead.
Oh.
Or Zoe, yeah, I don't know who was first. So.
Yeah. I forgot what I was going to say. I'm sorry. If I think of it, I'll raise my hand again.
I do have in my file a draft that we already wrote. That again, I think if we look at it again, make sure that it's current from February, that we do have a draft ready to send forth to City Council. It's just not in the, I guess it's not in the Google Docs.
Okay, well, so just so everyone knows, for a recommendation from this group that would be then going to City Council to recommend some sort of action or advice, we do not have to have it pre-prepared. We like to, just because it, sometimes it gets lengthy and has a lot of detail, and so we do take time to write it beforehand, but we don't have to. We can just, like in this moment, say, well, here's our recommendation and we can vote on it, just so that everybody knows kind of how that works. So it's really, up to you all if we want to, this I think might be the kind that we take the time to really dial in and work on, and then have a vote next month. But if we feel ready and feel like it's that urgent, of course we can do it now. So any thoughts on that? I'm going to take a moment to say this is why we need to be in person. Y'all are on mute, and this is a full discussion. So, let me know what you think about it. All right. Well, then we will revisit that in May, but we have discussed it. I'm sure Kim will include that in her report, so it'll at least be on the radar. And April 25th on the calendar. Dawn, go ahead.
I remembered. So I can talk to my team at Greenworks and see if we can put together a campaign for folks to get the word out, to encourage folks to contact their city council and staff.
That would be perfect. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Good on that part. Thank you. So for the policy working group, Patrick is absent today. I'll see if I can go through most of this. I'm actually not sure. I don't remember what the tree protection exemption is dealing with. Somebody jiggle my memory on that. Shardon, I don't remember what that specific piece was about. Tree protection exemption.
It's the legislation.
Oh, we're going to wait on that. So sorry, we're just going to take that off the agenda for now. Thank you. Okay, makes sense. Although, that could apply to our city work as well. But the landscaping draft code, so I know that is getting very close. There's not an update on that right now, but that is getting close to finalized. I know there's just sort of some last minute input, but that'll be rolled out. And I think that's going to have a huge impact when that is finalized and being required to be followed. It does change the requirements for development projects, like after they get past, everything, what they're actually doing on the ground. So it's going to have a huge impact. For Chapter 20, the policy working group met with a group from Public Works, and we've been through parts of Chapter 20. We're still working on it. It's a work in progress. I see Mark smirking. We got like half a page down on our discussion. Yeah, but it's in progress. I just saw another meeting was scheduled for later this month. So we're working through those details to shore up Chapter 20, get it just mostly cleaned up with the language and, aligned with some of the other, updates in urban forestry, because it's been a while since it's been implemented. I don't know if Chardon or Mark have any other thoughts on Chapter 20 other than in progress, I would say.
That about covers it.
Yeah. Chapter 19. We had that meeting a while back. I don't know if Chris has any other update, but the working group met with the city, and that one I know that we were close with at least what the UFC had suggested for updates there.
Hey, Amy. Yeah, we are close, and our goal was to get Keith on board, which we've done. And Keith is getting up to speed, and we are going to be seeking his input on those ordinance amendments. I think I have a time scheduled next week to get started on that. And so I think we should be able to stop the pausing and restart the momentum on that from there. So we should have a significant update ready for you by the next meeting.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Any questions from the rest of the group on where we're at with our policy work? Pardon me. And I wanted to offer, my stuff is getting very busy. So I know that Karen, you expressed an interest. Were you still interested in joining the policy working group?
Sure.
Now, I will say this one's a little more time consuming because there really is a lot of dialing into the detail of it. There's a learning curve of getting up to speed with just looking at ordinances and what they look like, which is why I wanted to be on the group. But I feel like I'm there now with my personal education, and now I just don't have time to lend as much help as I had hoped. So if everyone's okay with that, I will get off of that working group if Karen, you want to step on.
I'll step on. I will say that I will have more time after May because I'll finally be done with this master's program. So I feel like that works out perfectly.
Okay. Well, then what we'll do, how about this? I will stay on through April. And then we can formally change it up starting May.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, making a note. Okay, thanks. All right, so the Urban Forest Master Plan and Fee in Lieu Working Group, really with the master plan, oh, sorry, I forgot. I was going to send Keith the scope of work we prepared, so you'd have that. It's on my to-do list. I'll get that to you. So that's for the master plan. And as far as the working group, we're just kind of now in limbo to see if it gets funded, but we're ready to help when the funding comes into place. For the fee in lieu portion of that working group, we did, as we talked about last week, create that recommendation for the framework for the use of the fee in lieu funds. And I have it here. I distributed it to the group just to look at, but I'm going to go ahead and read our recommendation, and then we can vote on it and have discussion. So again, we all saw this. It's very minorly changed from last month. So this is a recommendation from the Urban Forestry Commission to City Council to create a framework for the distribution of fee in lieu funds for urban forestry projects. As background, fee in lieu funds are currently collected when developers are unable, for a variety of reasons, to adhere to Asheville's tree canopy ordinance when proposing new projects. Funds accumulate in the resource management areas from which they are collected, the central business district, urban, and suburban. Fees must be spent in the areas from which they were collected. For the framework, the following is intended as guidance for developing a framework for considering how fee in lieu funds could be managed to support the goal of increasing tree canopy in the city of Asheville. Proposed project areas include tree planting on public land, tree planting on private land, community engagement and education, land acquisition, capital improvement specific to trees and forests, and other special projects specific to urban forests, trees, and tree canopy protection. These categories could be used to track expenditures from fee in lieu funds for reporting, and projects could include more than one priority. The following questions are examples for how projects could be prioritized. In addition to these questions and categories, a matrix of quantifiable benefits can be employed. How does the project benefit urban forestry? How does it address forest canopy loss? How does it address issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion? How does it engage and educate the public? How are the benefits of urban trees enhanced, including water quality, habitat connectivity, and human health? And does the project enhance habitat for protected species? There should be a standardized proposal process with decisions made by a task force or group that includes the urban forester and members from other city departments, such as development, public works, planning, sustainability, and inclusion and equity. Our recommendation: therefore, the Asheville Urban Forestry Commission recommends that the City Council endorse the formation of a task force composed as recommended above to further develop and then implement a flexible and collaborative framework to prioritize and administer the distribution of fee in lieu funds for Asheville urban forest projects that enhance tree canopy preservation and health, as well as increase community knowledge of the benefits urban forests provide. So that is our recommendation as written. Is there discussion, corrections, questions?
I move to approve.
Thank you. I see a second.
I'll second that.
All right. Before we vote, is there any discussion or corrections? I saw one typo. There's an extra "the" in the second paragraph. To adhere to, instead of "the," strike that. Adhere to Asheville's tree canopy ordinance.
I move
Karen?
to approve the change.
Thank you. I should discuss that sooner. Is there a second for the final version with "the" removed?
I'll second unless it inhibits Karen from commenting.
No. We can still comment. So
Okay,
make sure
yeah,
we're on the same page. Thanks. Okay, Karen.
So this may be totally redundant, but I didn't see mention of a member of the Urban Forestry Commission on that task force.
So there's kind of two things. I was thinking about that. So we can add it. So the thought, though, is that the final decision making is likely not going to necessarily include the Urban Forestry Commission because it's a city framework. However, the task force for building this out certainly could and should involve the Urban Forestry Commission. So let me see. A potential edit to that might be, okay, in the last paragraph for the recommendation, it currently says that we recommend City Council endorse the formation of a task force composed as recommended above. We could edit that to say a task force composed as recommended above and including one or more members of the UFC. It's just a recommendation. We can ask for whatever we want. So composed as recommended above and including, let me get that.
Thank you. I mean, I feel better with that. I don't know.
I think you're correct. In that piece where we're still, talking about what should happen, that would be definitely an appropriate place for us to be. Because this is not a final, and this was never the intention to be a final framework. This is getting this ball rolling. Okay, one of the members of the UFC. Okay, one last motion to approve as amended, and a second, please. Oh, we lost Cecil. Okay, go ahead.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you.
And I'll second it.
Thank you. Okay, so, all right, Cecil got lost there, but we can still vote. We still have a quorum. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do okay, it's back. All right, Cecil, thank you for getting back. Are you there? All right. Go ahead and unmute. We're going to do the vote. And actually, since you were gone, we had one last amendment in the very last paragraph as the recommendation. We are recommending that the City Council endorse the formation of a task force composed as recommended above, and the changes, and including one or more members of the UFC for the task force version. So that's what we're voting on. So roll call, starting with Dawn.
Aye.
Zoe?
Aye.
Cecil?
Aye.
Sharon?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So our recommendation passes. That'll go to City Council with Councilwoman Roney's report. So thank you very much. And I'll send to Hunter this final version that we voted on, so we can include it in our documents. All right. Last working group is the appropriate species list. Have you all had any updates?
So Sharon and I went to go visit 56 South Lexington, also known as the Garage Apartments, to go meet with the folks from Living Roofs of Asheville and visit the living roof on top of the apartment. And it was an excellent field trip. And we got to see all the native perennials and grasses and herbs. Even in the winter, it was beautiful. Which brings me to the species list, which currently, as it stands, 70% on the recommended of the grasses, 70% on the recommended species list are not native. So we still have a recommendation or a request for a review of that list. And I think Nancy, have you had a chance to check in with, you're going to check in with some landscape architecture folks and the development folks to see how they felt about focusing more on edible and native species?
Sorry, wrong button. I have not, I will say this, Keith and I talked some this morning though. We need to stop using this list for everything, was our consensus. Like, we have landscape ordinance requirements. Those are trees and shrubs. That's it. Mm-hmm. So, and we feel like there could be other resources that we could use for other, that are more resources driven rather than the list that's on, the list that's for meeting the requirements. And then there's the tree protection list. And then and there's a need for, from some other staff to have one that is more layman's terms for your homeowner, your non-professional, and I think all of this could help feed into that, and that we can add some of these items, the more native and pollinators, to those as well. But this list is getting extremely complicated, and there are a number of things on there that don't because this is the recommended species list for landscape compliance. a green roof, there's nothing about compliance for a green roof in our
Well,
ordinance.
no, that was just a
So like, that's
sidebar.
right. So that's where I'm going. Does this need to live in this list, or this need to live in some other resources? Some other that we can send people to,
Well, to bring
or
it back
have for people. But yeah, and I can ask around I can ask. Yeah, I will put that back on my to-do list, or
you
put
can
it on
totally
Keith's
forget what
to-do
I said
list.
about the living roof, because that was just a fun thing that we did that was educational, but it really, and it was informative too, but as far as the recommended species list, Chad and Mark Foster chimed in that, we need one that is focused and streamlined, which I totally understand. And then we could potentially have a second one that had more in-depth options, but the focus and streamlined one should still, it seems, be focused on my initial email from about a month ago that said, these are natives, these are not natives, and these are edibles. And as a city that has pledged to support pollinators, we should really be having more native and pollinating species on our list and not non-native species.
Yeah, I can reach out. I'll reach out to some of our design community and add that back to my list to see what complications that they can, if there are any, what their opinion is. I mean, we're not opposed to it at all. At least adding them. It's whether we remove other options. Invasives we're going to remove. We don't want that. So,
yeah. Cool. So what I'm hearing is we need to shore up I don't know if it's still called the appropriate species, with the development list, right? So that one, obviously make sure that it's accurate and appropriate for development projects. But I like the idea of having additional resources and potentially lists. But the only downside is that can sometimes turn into the too many lists in too many places. So we'll just have to be careful how we set that up. So, Cecil.
Yeah, I gotta say, this is approximately insane. When I was elected in 2009, actually 2010 is when I took office, I became the council representative for SACE and the then Tree Commission. And already they had been working on getting rid of the invasives and all the other tweaks to the planting lists. This is 14 years later, and we still can't get rid of the invasives, and we still can't get rid of the stupid recommendations for planting. It's like, it boggles me. It totally boggles me. We've had work by people over and over again, trimming the list or trimming the recommended lists from SACE and from the Tree Commission over and over and over, and the cities just can't get it. And to me, it is like the most clear example of how bureaucracy is screwed up. Come on. Can't we get it right? We know what the invasives are. We know what the natives are. We know what the pollinator friendlies are. Why can't we make that happen? I'm baffled.
I think that's what the group's working on. So yes.
Good.
All right. So Karen and Sharon, and I believe Chardon. Yeah. So just keep going with it, and report back. Let us know what help you need to get that shored up. All right. Keith, go ahead.
For some reason, I always press the microphone in my picture, thinking that it's going to unmute me. But if you could send me that updated list, I've seen that different lists in different places that I've been reading off of, and apparently I was looking at an old one today. So if you could just email me that current list, and I could kind of match it up to my list as well, because the old list that I was looking at the other day, like hardly had anything native on it. And I was like, it didn't have any hickory or, I mean, there was nothing on it. And I was like, okay, this is a weird list, but I figured out it was, just old or whatever. I don't know where it even came from, but anyway, if you could send me the latest one, that'd be great.
Keith, I will absolutely update you with that. And the conversation that I had with Bill Stiles, and she had some great recommendations. And I'm so glad we have an urban forester to chime in on this. So yes, I will absolutely send you that information.
Perfect. Okay, well, I see that Chris Coral was able to jump in. Chris, are you there?
Hey, sorry
Hi.
I was late. My other
That's
commission got down a rabbit hole and went for a while.
Oh, that's good. We're glad you could join us. So, and this is actually perfect timing because it's the next thing on our agenda. So, the golf course, we had a call in that expressed the same concerns that we've sent to you, and so it's kind of been the questions that have come around and come to us from the community as well. So I know you've seen the issues that I'm talking about. So if you want to give us an update on where the golf course is at with the project and address, if you can, any of the issues of the removals and pruning and the issues with the contractor.
Yeah, sure. So the tree portion of the project is complete as of maybe a week or two ago, and they've ground down all stumps that were not on steep slopes. We left the steep slope stumps in and removed all the timber. I don't think anything's remaining at this point. So the tree portion of the project's done. They've moved on to tee boxes, bunkers, and cart paths starting last week and this week, respectively. As far as the pruning, we don't anticipate any additional pruning this year, at least nothing significant. If anything comes up, it would be conversation with Mark and the reason why any pruning would happen. But again, I don't think that's going to occur this year. Mark and I rode through, can't even remember what date now at this point, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I know he spoke with the contractor direct. I also did, and spoke with the arborists on the project direct. And then Mark and I went and looked at the last remaining trees that were to be pruned at that point in time, which were the ones along hole number 13. And then we met with the I met with the contractor at that point to go over all of Mark's recommendations specific to those trees. And they went through and pruned those, I think later that day or the next day. Mark, I don't know if you've had a chance to go back out and make sure it met your goals, but I think it did. It looks pretty good in my general opinion. Yeah, so that's where we are at the moment with the project. All wrapped up.
And so basically for us then, and we'll open up for questions, but the next steps would be in the fall, the planting, and you said that you're getting close on a planting plan?
Yes, and I think I might have just overheard the last bit of what you were talking about, but the Google Doc that we've been working off of that we gave the architect with the native varieties, did I just hear that is not quite accurate anymore?
Well, so it depends. You more than likely you have the correct list,
okay.
But there have been old lists but they're usually buried deep somewhere on the website. So you would have to have been in like the wrong place to get the wrong list.
Okay, I think Mark gave me this list. I can't remember, but I've had it bookmarked for a while. So it's, but there's a good list of trees on there, and the general plan of the process, Chris Spence, the architect, is going to suggest where trees are replanted in the course and which varieties, which we would then bring back to this group. And Mark would be, in our opinion, the final say on which trees we should plant on the property, but we wanted to vet it through this group as well. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, the list that I sent is probably the official one. It's the one that you find at the back of the standard specs manual.
Yep.
Any other lists that we've been developing over the last many years have been attempts to improve upon the existing list. But because the existing list and actually the standard specs manual itself, some elements of it haven't yet been updated, that's why, any lists we generate, they're not going to become official until the standard specs manual actually gets renewed. So, and I think that process is ongoing, but in my time working for the city, I've grown used to things moving at a glacial pace. It's just been my experience here. So, but yeah, you should have the official list. And yeah, I'm happy to go take a look at the pruning now that they've finished that row of pines on the front 9. I did have some concerns about some of those limbs that would be removed, being larger than I wanted removed.
Yeah, and I haven't looked specifically at that, but I did drive through that area the other day, and I think there's a couple big ones that we looked at were indeed left that we talked about leaving. So I think we're in a good spot. Yep.
All right. Any questions for Chris about the golf course project? All right, Karen?
Well, we did have a caller who expressed concerns about there not being an arborist on site when there was supposed to be, and that some trees were being taken out that were not supposed to be taken out, and that, as you mentioned, the pruning was maybe more severe than it should have been. So I guess I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, Chris.
So did confirm with the arborist that he was there on the pruning days, and he was not there on some of the days when they were removing only. The trees that were removed that weren't on the list, there was only one, and it actually had broken itself in half in a storm a couple days prior. There's another tree that's near hole number 9, that's like near the storage unit as you enter on Fairway Drive, that snapped in half in a storm recently as well, that I presume is going to be removed. We have not yet done it because it's literally just a trunk, and all of the branches and everything are what snapped off. So it goes up about 8 feet and stops at this point. So those are the only 2 trees that were not on the list that were removed. So I'm not sure where that caller is getting that from.
Yeah, I think we did talk in past meetings about how frequently ribbons were being yanked off of trees, but the list remained regardless of whether or not a ribbon was on a tree.
All right, Karen, before Shonan, yeah, go ahead, you're still.
Yes, we have spoken about that, but there just seem to be pretty serious concerns that maybe some aspects of the project weren't exactly implemented how they were presented in the plan. And so that's something that I feel like is it's a valid concern of community members that are living nearby. And I'm just wondering, what kind of oversight and accountability can we have, and how can we improve this process?
I don't know if I have an answer for that as far as how what the oversight can look like. So in this case, the operator of the course, Commonwealth, is managing the project on our behalf. We, the city, inserted ourselves a little more than we are with the rest of the project on the tree portion specifically, just because we knew it was a little bit more of a hot button issue in the community. And so, I met with the contractor probably 2 to 3 times a week throughout the whole process. And I know Mark had multiple conversations with them throughout the process, and at the beginning, probably more inserted in the project than he initially thought he was going to be. So definitely was oversight. As far as the UFC specifically, if you're speaking of that, I don't know anything about y'all's bylaws, but assuming it's similar to our Civic Center Commission Advisory Board, I think that would come down to changes in how the bylaws are structured as to what oversight could be on a project like this. But I'm speculating there. I definitely don't know. Yeah.
So this is, I think, my last question or comment. If it is found that pruning was done improperly and not to ISA standards, or that trees were removed that weren't supposed to be removed, it does say in Chapter 20 that there's a $100 fee for that. And for each subsequent day that the violation is happening, it's another $100 fee. So I'm just putting that out there as, you know, as some form of that, like that's what we do, that's what we have right now. And it's more of a conversation of how do we implement that, you know? And so I don't have all the answers either. I'm just saying what the information that I know so far.
Gotcha. I also don't know. I don't, Mark, maybe you do.
I can ask Greg Schuler, who as Public Works Director is over Chapter 20 tree administration, and see if there is a need for him to pursue some sort of financial penalty against the contractor. I was definitely not happy with some of the pruning cuts I saw on the oak trees in the back 9. It's not how I envisioned pruning solutions to making the golf course more usable and improving the growing of the grass. Other than that, you know, I don't know what to suggest as far as holding, you know, the contractor accountable or whatever. It's definitely a project with a greater extent than their hired arborist could spend all his time with, apparently, since he was working for another tree company, and this was an additional duty that he had assumed to do guidance for their work. And I definitely couldn't spend all day, every day during the course of this project over there. You know, I have my own duties here in Public Works to take care of on a daily basis. So I don't know, I guess I don't know what you're envisioning as far as accountability beyond what you've just mentioned so far. I know going forward, if we have another large project like this where the pruning is supposed to be done to standards, we're going to need to have a lot stronger conversation at the front end, the expectations of what that looks like, and probably a more detailed conversation walking around with the contractor to each location. And rather than just saying, yes, we can fix this by pruning instead of removing this tree too, or that tree too, or whatever. And because the whole point of trying to find pruning solutions was to try and manage the number of trees that were removed. You know, I'm fully aware of that. That's what I was trying to accomplish. So I certainly hope that among my detractors, they at least understand that I didn't say, yeah, let's do, you know, gigantic pruning cuts on these trees.
Yeah, you had a very clear conversation with Gabe at the start of it about using certain standards, how it works. Like that was pretty clear at the start.
Yeah, I thought so. And so a trip around with the contractor, you know, because myself and Matt, you know, with the golf course management company and Chris, you know, we went around in golf carts repeatedly looking at things and pointing to things and talking about things and saying, we could do this here and do that there and whatever. But I think the contractor maybe needed to be involved in as many of those laps around as possible, so that they had a clear understanding of what our expectations was. I think the disconnect may have been that, okay, they're going to have an ISA certified arborist, you know, minding the store for them while they're doing the pruning. Everything will be just fine. Well, okay, that didn't work that way. So we obviously have a learning opportunity here, that you can't just expect that somebody is going to envision the same way you do how you try and fix a problem or how you try and manage a situation to try and meet the needs of different stakeholders.
I want to just say thank you, Mark. I know you have a full plate, so I appreciate that. I also just want to emphasize that, I mean, these are public trees, these are community trees. And I feel like if the plan was not implemented the way it said it was going to be, that there should be consequences for this project and not keep pushing it forward to the next project.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Thank you, Karen. Good points. I know, Mark, you kind of said for a second there you'll check, up the ladder. So I think that would be a great place to at least start, like Karen says, with this project, seeing if there can be recourse for things that you believe were clearly stated and didn't happen the way you wanted. So I believe next was Chardon.
Yeah, Mark, I'm happy to hear that you weren't satisfied with those pruning cuts. I understand your goal of keeping trees instead of removing them, but removing large limbs like that, you might as well just remove the tree.
I wasn't happy about them either, Chardon.
I mean, I think this, for future projects of this size on public trees, I don't fully understand why the city hired a company that did not have certified arborists on staff. And I don't understand why the city hired a company that didn't have certified arborists climbing, and a lot of this could have been prevented if an educated, certified arborist would have been climbing the trees and doing the pruning themselves, as opposed to just having an arborist sign off on the project. And I think it also goes back to, the city's, I don't fully know this policy, but I've heard it before, where you choose the lowest price with the responsive party, and you get what you pay for. A lot of people can be responsive and do really crappy work. And I think that this is a great example of that. And so maybe that can be revised in the future too, where you actually pay for quality arborists to do quality of work on this big of a project, as opposed to the landscaper. And also, as far as the flags being removed on the trees, I mean, somebody that walks the course, almost daily and sees what's going on through this whole project mentioned that, trees were being removed in really brushy, overgrown areas that did not have flags on them. And their concern was that, okay, if flags are being removed, it just seems really implausible for somebody to crawl through all this brushy area to remove flags on a tree that was removed. I guess my question on that is, as far as trees possibly being removed that weren't on the list, are there any before and after pictures that we can reference and present to the public, as far as this was this tree and this was that tree? Because right now we just have your all's word that no trees were removed without being flagged.
If I can jump, well, you can probably jump in on the brushy areas too. You probably know about it more than I do, but I was just going to say that the whole place has been getting spruced up with removal of all kinds of invasives and other various brush and things that have been coming up. And that's a completely separate pursuit being carried out by the golf management company. It has nothing to do with the contract. So I don't know if Chris, you wanted to go farther with that.
Yeah, and I don't know who the caller was that brought that in, but I've had one specific person approach me numerous times at the course and even knock on my front door about those trees. And the brush trees, to my understanding, I can't remember if it was a 4-inch diameter or 6-inch diameters, like when a tree becomes like an official counted tree. So like when we did our inventory, that was, I think, roughly 2,400 trees on course. That was only trees that were 6 inches wide or greater at breast height, I think it was. And so there's clearing that's been happening in the brush sides of the course that has involved like trees that might be 2-3 inches around, that might be, I don't know, 10 to 12 feet tall, but just part of like the general clearing of brush, which has been English ivy in some cases. I think the fire bush is one that it's been called in some cases, privet bushes, other small trees, but just like clearing airflow around. That's been done on holes 1 through 10 and partially on hole 11 and 13. And they're holding off and doing additional clearing until the fall because they've moved on to tee boxes and grass growing projects for the spring.
I think what I heard from the person I'm referencing, it was large mature trees, obviously over 6 inches in diameter being removed without flags in brushy areas.
Yeah. So definitely not, but the way that you could like check against our word, I guess, if you go to Google Street View, there's an opportunity like in the upper right, you can actually click and it can take you to certain points in time. And there was one completed, I want to say this past July or August. So you can go back to August of 2022 and then go compare it to real time. And you can get updates. Like you have to go on the computer for 2022, but then go live and in person to see present. But you can clearly see a good number of the trees around the course just by walking through the neighborhood on Google Street View. And I have some before and afters in some areas. I don't think I have every single hole though.
Well, I future, on these big projects, it would be helpful for the public to know, to have visual evidence of which trees were removed, especially how quickly they were moving with the stump grinder. There's very little evidence of what trees were actually still standing and what species and how big they were. So I think that would alleviate some concern that I've heard from the public that, potentially large trees are being removed. And especially with how the landscape company conducted themselves, especially with parking on tree root systems, I think that it's not out of the question that trees were removed that were not supposed to be removed. The other thing I'll bring up is just the parking on the trees. What kind of recourse is happening with that, and how do y'all plan to remediate areas where they were parking on tree roots?
We addressed that at the beginning whenever we had some issues with parking under roots. Mark and I have not done it yet, but Mark agreed to come out and look at areas and see if there are any areas that looked like especially compacted to see if and what we needed to do about it. But we have not gone through the course yet to look at that.
And will the contractor be held responsible financially to remediate that?
I think it depends on what the situation is, right?
Yeah, again, just for future reference, I think that, if you're going to have rules against subcontractors to not park on tree roots, I think that there can be a written contract saying this is what happens every infraction that occurs, beyond the chapter 20 that Karen mentioned. I think having it specifically, because I know you all, talked to them beginning of the project about it, but it continually happened, and there's documented evidence from public parties of excavators just sitting on tree roots for days and days and days. Even towards the end of the project, it wasn't just in the beginning. So my suggestion.
Okay. Some of the questions you had earlier, Chardon, about the contracting process and taking the low bid and that sort of thing. I can't speak completely about Chris's managing of the project, but as somebody who has, put out contracts before and had people put in quotes, you don't always have everybody you would like to put in a quote do so. And some of the quotes you get are way higher for good work than other people's quotes for good work. You have to go with the lowest responsive bidder. That I'm pretty sure that's state law. And as far as a landscape company not having an arborist retained full-time on their payroll, unless I guess we were to establish that as at the front end of a contract, I'm not sure how you could force somebody to, retain staff that they had, they weren't necessarily intending to employ, and say, you will have to have this person working for you now full time. I don't know how to force somebody's company to do that. That's why they pursued getting consulting arborists to help them with the process. And based on what I saw on a group text, responsible arborists were reached out to, and they didn't participate in the process. Maybe it would have been beneficial for them to do so, but you can't force people to participate in the project.
Yeah, I'm not saying you have to force people to participate, but I think the city should be held as the gold standard of how to treat trees, and this is definitely not the gold standard. And it might be something to consider in the future if there aren't qualified people applying to bid the job. Maybe the job should be reconsidered.
Well, when you're trying to get a job done and you have a lifespan on the money that's available to do it, you're going to have to spend that money while you have it and do the best you can to do the best work you can with that money. But I think maybe our expectations about how things, should be or must be or whatever, how we envision them is not necessarily how things always work out. But we'll do our best to do what we can to meet the needs of as many customers as possible, not just the ones who are the most upset about something. Those tend to be a very small group of people, as was the case here. The last few laps around the golf course with Chris, looking at the aftermath from the pruning, we were getting people slapping us on the back, telling us how much more they appreciated the work having been done at the golf course and that they were listened to. I've been trying to manage situations over there with pruning that was pretty strict, not taking off limbs bigger than 4 inches, that sort of thing. And it wasn't getting us to the outcome where people were coming up and thanking us for the work that was done and how much more they enjoy being on the course and how the course was fixed. Obviously not in the eyes of an arborist. And like I said, I was not happy with pruning cuts I saw on the oaks on the back 9. It turned my stomach looking at a lot of them. But as far as satisfying the customers, the citizens, I think we made way more citizens happy with the project, and it's not even complete yet, than we made unhappy.
Well, I hear you. And I know y'all did your best, but I hope that you all learn from what happened here and it doesn't happen again. Because
sure. We always want to learn and do better.
Yeah, I think it's a poor representation of how this city can treat trees.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Due to time, Cecil, we have to be the last one. If you could make
Okay, I just want to say that you talk about a small group of citizens who are happy. Those are the golfers.
No, large group of citizens that were happy.
That's a very small group within the city. I think if you took a referendum, most of the people in the city would rather have a forest there than a golf course. So
that's a bigger consideration than this event, though. Obviously,
of course, it is a bigger a bigger consideration. But when I was on council, we were losing money hand over fist on that golf course, and then we got a contractor who apparently is making some money on it. But we're doing damage to our tree canopy to satisfy a small group of people who like to golf. And why? Really, why? I totally don't get that. I mean, okay, it's a classic golf course by some famous developer or something, but it's not benefiting the city. Let's let the trees grow. Let's let the trees grow. And let the golfers go to Grove Park or wherever the hell they want to go. That's my view.
You want to address that, Chris?
Yeah, so I guess what I would
out
say
of my league.
That golf course provides golf access to people that can't afford to play at the Grove Park. Our average round is something like $24 a round compared to like 70 or 80 at the Grove Park and even in the 60s down at the Broadmoor. And yeah, it is designed by a world-class golf architect. And but when Pope came in, so the city was losing a ton of money on it when you were in council. And then I think your council voted to bring Pope in as the lessee. And they were making a little bit of money on there, but so was the city because they were paying us a guaranteed amount for the first 7 years of their contract. And then due to issues related to stormwater and a lot of finger pointing, they stopped paying. And we got rid of that operator and are currently suing them. And we're in the midst of a lawsuit right now to try to get that money back from that operator, and then selected a new operator to run point on this project. And the way the pro forma works and the model that we're basing it off of other municipal golf courses that have done similar in the past, the money, or the course should be turning a profit within the next 6 to 9 months. And we're on a revenue share deal with that operator, so they don't get 100% of that revenue. And we're guaranteeing that 100% of the city's portion of that revenue is reinvested in the course in the following fiscal year. So that course will constantly have turf improvements, youth programming improvements, all these various things, and will become a self-sustaining entity, which then in theory reduces the need for city to put input money into the project, which then frees up money for other things like, I don't know, funding an urban forester, something like that.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, if I could attempt to sum up, first of all, thank you, Chris, for meeting with us and talking to us. And, this group, obviously, we are here for the trees. So that's what you're going to hear about. So I do think it's important to have the conversation and take it forward so that the city can do better and learn from those mistakes and, hopefully remedy some of those that did happen. So, Mark, we will look forward to hearing what the Director of Public Works says about possible recourse with the contractor. I think that would be important to at least, push that up and see where it can go. Lastly, on the golf course, and this is just me again, I'm just going to say this as a citizen that I hear all the concerns. It troubles me to pit trees against anything. And I think that we can have a better conversation by putting these things together. The fact that we have a golf course with trees on it, I think they can come together rather than separate. So again, that's my personal soapbox on that point there. But that recreation is important in my mind. So anyway, that's all I'm gonna say. But thank you, Chris, for letting us know where we're at with that. And we do look forward to the tree planting plan. All right, well, thanks. All right, so last thing on old business is the missing middle housing task force that just got started up. Haven't met yet. The first meeting will be April, I believe it's the 26th. I'll be the representative. Currently, Patrick is the backup, but we might have to change that because if he's already representing another group and if he has to vote as a backup, it would get weird. So we'll talk to you all about that if we need to change our backup plan. But nothing new there. I'll let you know. We haven't had the first meeting yet, but I'll fill you in next month. So for new business, we need to talk about July because currently our July meeting is July 4th. So obviously we will not be meeting that date. Nancy, did you come up with some options for us?
I actually came up with, I think it was, I don't have it right in front of me. I believe it was the 17th through the 26th of July. I believe it was on a Tuesday, so I kept it on a Tuesday, but the 17th or 26th. And there wasn't anything scheduled on the planner, so.
Why not the 4th, our usual fireworks?
Yeah, all right. So hold on. So Keith, those are both Mondays. So were you looking at maybe the 18th or 25th?
Yeah, maybe it was whatever those two Tuesdays are at the end of the month is what I was looking at.
Gotcha.
18th and 25th.
Yeah.
Well, I will personally be gone both of those, but I don't know if someone else wants to take over. But yeah, so the other option, let's see. So we have the June meeting, June 6th. And then personally, I don't know, obviously it's going to be summer. We're going to have a hard time meeting everyone's schedule. For me, it'd be better to move the July meeting forward rather than back, because then August also gets busy with last minute summer vacations and things like that. So
is Tuesday delimited by staff? Is that why Tuesday?
Not necessarily, but we do have to work around, obviously the other meetings that are already, regularly scheduled. So yeah. I think that was part of the thought there. I don't know about June 27th, going actually the week before our usual meeting. I don't know if there's conflicts for the city on that date, or the 11th. again, for me, those are good, but I'll be gone that last couple weeks of July.
Is the August meeting on August 1st?
Yes.
Late June makes more sense, depending on what we have in terms of alternative compliance.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. Keep it as close as possible to that original date, either the 1 week before or after, if possible. Does anybody know right now for sure they have a conflict with the 27th or the 11th? All right. So how about this? So city folks, if you want to look into it and let us know if one of those dates would work. Okay, appreciate that. Thank you. All right, so that's July meeting date. All right, lastly on new business, hopefully you all saw the announcement of this, but I think did we talk about it last month? The Municipal Climate Action Plan that the Department of Sustainability had created. They worked with a contractor, I believe, on this, but it was adopted by City Council at one of their last meetings, so it's freshly been minted and approved by City Council. We just wanted to go over it briefly, some of the key points, because there are pieces in here that relate to trees. Before I get too far, Nancy, go ahead. You're on mute, Nancy.
You said June 26th or 27th?
The 27th, right? Is that the Tuesday?
Tuesday's 27th. I was going to say 26th is out. So
yeah, no, that's good. The 27th.
Okay, 26th. I mean 27th. Okay, sorry.
Or the 11th. Thank you. All right, back to the Municipal Climate Action Plan. So the way it's set up is there are 3 goals, and it's linked here in the agenda, so if you want to look at it. 3 goals, sort of broad buckets that the rest of the focus areas are created around. So goal 1, city-owned assets are resilient, sustainable, and efficient. Goal 2, sustainability and climate priorities are embedded in city operations, participation, and decision-making. And goal 3, the city supports sustainability and resilience for area residents and businesses. And there is some specific language, particularly around goal 3, that talks about trees. Let's see if I can find it. Okay. Sorry, give me 1 second. I can't remember where that summary was, if anybody wants to guide me on that. Oh, here we go. Activities. So specifically number 18. So these are activities around the goal. Activity number 18 is utilize urban forestry practices on city land in priority neighborhoods to reduce heat island impacts and sequester carbon. So that's good news, right? It is like written right in there. City Council voted on this. This is now a priority and an action item. So as we're in particular talking about our budget requests, we can point right to this. How does an urban forest master plan and inventory meet these goals? We can make a clear connection there. I also argue, although they did not, I believe, write it in, I have not read every page yet, but goal number 1, talking about city assets, where'd it go? Assets are resilient, sustainable, and efficient. The modern tree inventories are associated with software and data management systems that can assign each tree actual numerical value, monetary value, can quantify benefits to the community, to habitat and stormwater. So we can also make the pitch that an inventory combined with the appropriate software and data would be a way for the city to monitor and meet the assets goal as well. So just some key points there. I don't know if anyone had a chance to look through and has any other pieces they want to highlight or any questions. I'm going to make you all meet in person so I can get you to talk. All right. So also, when you do look through there, if we have any questions for the Office of Sustainability, I invited them. They were busy. It was a last minute request, but they are available. If we had questions, they said just send them up and they'll address them. So. Okay. Well, then your silence is noted. All right, updates. So Asheville Greenworks, would you like to introduce Sarah?
Yes, thank you. It's my great pleasure to introduce Sarah Millar, who is our new Community Forestry Coordinator. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, everyone.
Sarah started a few weeks ago. Would you like to say anything about your background or how the first 3 weeks have been?
Yeah, well, my background, I grew up in High Point, North Carolina, and recently moved to Asheville from Roosevelt, South Carolina a couple years ago. And I attended NC State and got my master's in horticultural science. My thesis project was a forestry project. And I've always wanted to put my degree to use to help the environment and help the communities. And so far, this is my 5th week, and we had our first nursery work day today, and it was great. And I've been involved in a few really fun projects with some great volunteers and school groups, and I'm having a great time, and I'm so happy to be here.
Thanks, Sarah. We're very excited for you to be here, and time is flying because I thought you've been here for a shorter amount of time, but then you have. But we're so happy that you're on the team, and will eventually be the Greenworks representative for the Urban Forestry Commission. So
welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
And I hope we get a chance to meet all the folks who are here, or at least get to talk to folks as we get you settled in to your role. And other big news that I'm happy to share with the Commission related to climate resilience, actually, is that Asheville has been selected as one of the participating cities in an urban heat island mapping study that is being put together through NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, I think is the acronym. And we're partnering with the Office of Sustainability at the City of Asheville and NEMAC and others to do a heat study, mapping study in the summer. So probably that 3rd week of July sometime. We plan to, they were silent the whole time. As soon as I start talking, start barking. So anyway, we'll have a huge group of volunteers, between 60 to 100 volunteers, going out 3 times on that one day. We tried to pick the hottest day of the summer to record heat at ground level. So this will enhance the level of detail that we have for heat across the city, eventually tying into the city's climate justice map, the urban tree canopy study, and other layers, so we can look at where there are climate inequities within the city, where the best planting sites are that are going to have the biggest impact, and so forth. So we're very excited about this. If you'd like to participate, more information is coming soon. Thank you.
Thank you. And just so everyone knows, it's easy to sign up for updates from Asheville Greenworks. They send regular emails, and I'm going to do a shameless pitch while we have a minute. On my Amazon, it's very easy to hook up your Amazon Smile so that a portion of your purchases, if you use Amazon, go as charitable donations to Asheville Greenworks. So that's what I do. Yeah. So just a thought. Any other
Thank you,
thoughts?
Amy.
Yeah, no one's going to talk. I'm going to soapbox this thing up. So any other comments or concerns before we adjourn? Cecil.
Yeah, I fought for almost 2 decades to create a park downtown across from the Civic Center, across from the Basilica. And the final plan that the city of Asheville paid $350,000 for the final, or the current anyway, plan to create a park there, included a building in part of that area where the Elders and Sage Garden is these days. And Nina Tovish, who was a city council candidate in the last election, has come up with an idea for the building piece, the building that would fit into there, to be a climate activist center, a building that would be a symbolic and practical alternative energy building with educational spaces and all. And I am hugely supportive of her idea that we could help establish Asheville as a climate conscious community. And so I'm just offering that up. You're going to hear more about it coming up in the future, but I mean, that would be very Asheville in my view. We would keep Asheville weirdly concerned about the environment.
Well, Cecil, if you see anything, keep us updated. I
will.
actually have in my little notebook, there is a line right here that I think a recommendation to develop the so-called pit of despair with green space and tree canopy would be an appropriate recommendation for this group to make. So I want to wait. I would like our budget request to be the ultimate goal in this moment. So I didn't want to quite press for it yet, but I think, as soon as, June, July rolls around, we can start pitching whatever's next, such as this. So
damn straight.
All right. Good idea. I appreciate that. Thanks. Shardon?
It's just a shopkeeping question. You mentioned about meeting in person. Is that up for discussion in the coming months, or where do we stand on that? Just curious.
Sadly,
as a new member.
no. I asked, and Cecil, this is really, it's not anything personal. I keep thinking back to our meeting, our retreat in January, and I just personally believe our level of discussion and engagement is so much better. That's the only reason. I totally understand the driving around and all of that. Maybe Cecil will have to pick us all up in his EV and we can carpool. But no, we are not able to change our current setup until the end of the year.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
We could have a publicly held retreat at a restaurant though, or something, right?
Well, so already, this is the third time actually we brought this up. So we usually have a social, just a social lunch. I guess we did briefly. There was only like 3 of us there. So I don't know if we can call it that. But anyway, we usually have like a social lunch in the winter, but there's nothing that keeps us from having another one whenever we want. So maybe I'll send something around so we can find a date to get together under a tree and have some picnic lunch. So I think that'd be great. So just to re-engage and get together. So that would be no official business kind of thing, but we can do that. So yeah. Zoe?
I was just going to say maybe we could meet outside somewhere. There's a lot of good spaces now to meet outside, even up the river or Zillicoa or someplace like that.
Good idea. All right, we'll be in touch on that one. I think we should certainly have a little spring social event. And then we can get to know it in person. Sarah, Keith, if you all can make things like that so we can move forward with our shared goals.
Yeah.
Good. Well, look at this. We are right on time. Excellent. So we do not need a roll call vote to adjourn. I just need to know if there's any opposition to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
All right. We don't have to move and we don't have to vote. So
Okay, then I don't move to adjourn.
as long as you don't oppose, then we're good. So otherwise, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. We will see you in May.
Thank you.
Thanks.